Okay, so Chad Behnke is a graphic designer and illustrator. His Instagram is @ChadBehnke, and his website is chadbehnke.com. So that's pretty easy, not too hard. And Chad, hey Chad, hey, how you doing? You were in the Creative Focus workshop last fall, is that right? Or was it last spring and then?
I think it was last spring, yeah.
Right, last spring also, okay. So I also had a chance to talk with Chad a couple of months ago, and I haven't had a chance to write up our interview yet, but got some of the background and so on, very interesting insights. So I'm going to go through Chad's a couple of slides of Chad's work here, and then we will continue on. So Chad has a full-time day job as a graphic designer, but also wants to be doing and is trying to develop a sort of new sort of side of what he does, which is being an illustrator, and especially doing these kind of like imaginary world building stuff. So he does a bunch of pieces like this, and these are mostly on your Instagram, right? Yeah, so there's really cool graphic design pieces that, like this one is part of your pulp project, right?
Yeah, which is sort of an umbrella collection of smaller like illustrations and maybe some write-ups, which is part of what I learned from the workshop, so I can go into that a little bit later too.
Right. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. So this, I thought this was really cool. You sent me some work in progress, and I have seeing sort of like a graphic designer in work mode was really cool for me. So these are all a whole bunch of different ideas for this one logo, right?
Yeah.
And then this is there's the final logo.
So actually no. So I made this right after the workshop last June. And this is sort of, so that's the like 40s, 50s version of it. And this is like the 70s, 80s version of it. So I'm going to do an evolution of that. And this is
like the brand is
like
moving.
They have to redesign to match like the time period. So that's what it looks like after they've actually done that exercise.
That's super
so that's
cool.
in progress, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so cool. So that's the 50s version, the old version, and we're going to see the new one coming up. If you follow them on Instagram, I'm sure you'll see the new pieces as they come up. So the secret I wanted to talk to you about primarily, Chad, and again, there's lots of other pieces, and one of the things we just mentioned, this Pulp magazine is sort of one of them, but the idea of weekly review, so weekly review is one of the things we do in the Creative Focus workshop, where basically the idea is we develop a system where every week you just take a moment to reflect on your week and plan your following week. And this is a way to keep the process moving beyond just the 4 weeks of the intense workshop, but keep it going in your own practice on an ongoing basis. So can you talk a little bit about how that works for you?
Yes, this dovetails fairly nicely with the last talk. I am very guilty of a lot of guilty artist, like I should be working kind of stuff. And I think you were the hapless victim of a soapbox rant on like artistic work fetishism stuff. So
wait, before you move on from that, I just want to define what you're talking about, because this is something I think very funny and also very true, and I totally agree with you. I was not being ranted at because I was totally agreeing. The idea you're getting at here is this sort of fetishization of working all the time. Like when you're a creative person, you have to, like, every minute you're not at your job or taking care of your children, you should be making your creative work. And even when you're doing stuff like at your job or taking care of your children, you're like, I should be working on my creative work. And there's this sense of like, always, there's no end to it. I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yep, that's just the whole like 10,000 drawings thing, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I resonated with that part of the program. And we also have this thing that we do at work, where we have a weekly team meeting, and at that weekly team meeting, we post our top threes, which is like 3 areas of focus that we're going to do for that week. So I stole that for my weekly review. So every Sunday evening, I have a calendar invite, and inside of that calendar invite, I have my own personal top threes.
Meaning like a reminder that pops up on your calendar.
Yeah, well, it's like an invite, and in the invite, I have notes that has all of this information in it, and I should have had a screenshot of that, but I didn't do that. So those top threes are multidisciplinary, so they're not necessarily, they are, but they're not necessarily all creative. So I generally have 3 to 4, and one is usually creative, one is usually something social, and one is usually something work related. Because in general, they usually balance most of the time. So I'll come up with something in each of those 3 categories that I want to accomplish that week. And then the next week, the first thing I do before I come up with those is look at what I decided to do last week and decide how well I did at that. In addition to that, I just sort of look at like things in general, like, oh, I had this weird work meeting. That was weird. What could I do differently? So like stuff like that. So it's sort of a just very broad reflection time. But the sort of key part of this is that if there is something, let's say I have a pitch meeting for a client and I'm flying out to this client on like Thursday.
Meaning for work,
yeah,
for your job.
Right, for example. And like I'm flying out to meet them on Thursday. Not only do you have to like be there on Wednesday and Thursday or whenever you're there, but you're going to be building slides or whatever it is for this presentation. You're going to be in a headspace where even if you're not at work, you're like, oh man, all this stuff is happening and I'm going to leave and I hope that they like what I made and yada, yada, yada. So all of those things sort of contribute to this atmosphere where you're not going to be able to like count out a whole comic book panel or whatever it is you're working on, because you're not really, even though you may have the sort of free time to do it, you're not like necessarily in the right mode to be like, oh, I'm gonna crush it at this, because you're really distracted. And really like, and thinking about it in that way, the most important part is that it eliminates the distraction when you actually are doing work that came before, where he was like, is this enough? Like, is this what I should be doing? That kind of stuff. And it opened me up to like being more productive, ironically, even though I'm categorizing what I can't do.
Right. I mean, that's the funny thing for me, and this is, I think, true of a lot of people, that you actually, like, your secret is defining what you're capable of doing in a given week and saying, like, this is what I really want to be doing. This is what I really can do. Like, if I have a big pitch meeting, that's going to take over my week. I may only have one goal that week. That's it. I'm just going to do that one thing. But doing that and the self-forgiveness that allows for you, and the focus on the thing itself and making sure that thing works properly, was the thing that opened up your, like lessened your anxiety levels and opened up your sense of power over your time and over yourself to like 10x the amount of stuff that you were doing. You said that basically you'd done like what, 1 piece in the previous year, and then you did like 7 in under 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an enormous change.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Can't really multiply, because multiplying times 0 is 0.
Well, you did 1, so. Yeah, but I mean, I'm actually seeing that with a lot of people. I like to try to figure out, is there a number, so I can help people understand like what going through this kind of process can help them do. And there's no one number, right? Like some people it's, 50x, and some people it's like 2x. No, whatever it is, it's more. And what's interesting about it to me is that often that happens by deciding to do less. Like you consciously decide to do less, but then you actually do it, as opposed to deciding you're going to do everything, but then not actually doing any of it, or not doing very much of it because you're so busy worrying about the other things you're not doing, or like you're trying to split your time or whatever it is. Yeah, so this alludes to what I was talking about earlier with that whole project, and that when we started, part of the creative focus workshop is you take the project and you like chop it down into small pieces that you can accomplish. And as I started working on that, I was also working on another project that was an obligation. That was this very long, like, documentation project. And it drove me crazy, like insane. And
the reason why I got into this workshop in the first place is I saw the idea debt article. And there's like 6 or 7 bullet points that are like, you maybe have idea debt if, and I was guilty of all 7. And so I was building this big thing, and I realized at the same time while I was kind of breaking these projects down, I'm really bad. I'm not a person who's ever going to like write a book or have like a graphic novel, because that's not how my brain works. So once that connected with me, that like I can't think about, because I'm like, I'll just like cycle down into like the small bits and pieces of it, and it'll never get done. So I made a conscious break from making that giant like world building project to like, I'm gonna make logos, and I'm gonna make illustrations, and these things are gonna take me anywhere from 1 day to a week, and that's it. And I'm not gonna ask myself all the like research. I mean, I do research and stuff for whatever I'm working on, but like I'm not gonna sit and spin my wheels on like process and thinking about how I'm gonna build this and how it's gonna fit in with everything. It had to be a really self-contained project, and that was a huge change for me when it went from thinking about them that way to thinking about it this way. That was how essentially I unlocked my productivity, because I stopped having to worry about this, how it's going to work with this like larger narrative, and it's about like making these really good pieces that are interesting for people to look at and fairly quick for me to create.
Yeah, I mean, it's the quick wins idea that we talk about with the one goal. Yeah. All right, I got to keep moving here. I'd like to talk to each of you guys for an hour, but I can't. I got to get Jamie going. So thank you for being here, Chad.
Great.
And hope we'll talk to you some more and see you in the chat.
Yeah, for sure.